Every Thanksgiving, my East Asian wife made me enter her family's mansion through the back door so the real guests wouldn't see me.
Last Thanksgiving was supposed to be just another uncomfortable holiday I had to quietly survive. Instead, it became the day everything changed. For years, I'd learned to stomach the humiliation that came with being married to Sarah and dealing with her wealthy, self-important family, the Blackwells. They lived in this massive mansion that looked like it belonged on a magazine cover, grand columns, perfectly manicured hedges, and imported chandeliers. The whole place was designed to intimidate anyone who didn't live their lifestyle. I grew up in a completely different world. My dad worked construction and my mother cleaned offices at night. I spent my early 20s sweating through manual labor jobs before finally climbing my way into commercial real estate. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest work that built me into someone I was proud of, even if the Blackwells pretended not to see it. From the very beginning, they made sure I felt out of place. They'd joke about me being from the working class, they'd mock my truck, and they always acted like Sarah had married far beneath her standards. Every holiday I went in determined to be polite and just get through it. And every single time, Sarah would meet me at the front door with this apologetic look on her face and whisper the same degrading instruction. "Hey, can you use the kitchen entrance? Guests are using the front, you understand, right?" And like a fool, I always nodded. I'd circle around their massive estate like a delivery guy, enter through the back door, and sit alone in the kitchen while her family drank expensive wine and ate dinner on fine china under chandeliers big enough to blind someone. But the worst part wasn't her family, it was that Sarah let it happen. She never once said, "He's my husband. He belongs with me." She just blended right into their snobbery like it was the only world she recognized. They had no idea that while they were busy dismissing me as the blue-collar outsider, I had quietly built an empire of my own. Sterling Holdings, a real estate company that managed dozens of commercial properties across multiple states. And the biggest irony of all? I owned the very house they looked down on me from. 3 years earlier, when Sarah's father, Robert, had some bad investments and they were drowning in mortgage debt, I quietly bought the estate from the bank. Sarah had begged me to do it to save her childhood home, and I did. They never asked where the help came from. They never even imagined it could have been me. Then, last Thanksgiving arrived, the night that cracked their perfect, fragile illusion. I showed up with a bottle of expensive scotch only to be told, once again, to use the back entrance. So I did, swallowing that familiar sting of humiliation. I sat at the kitchen island, eating a dry sandwich, while their laughter drifted in from the dining room. Suddenly, the front door opened, and a booming voice carried through the house. "That better be Victoria's famous stuffing. I drove 2 hours for this." It was Marcus Wellington, one of the most powerful real estate developers in the entire country, and, coincidentally, my biggest client. The whole house went silent. And then Marcus stepped into the kitchen, saw me, and his face lit up like he'd just found gold. "Hey, boss," he said loud enough for the entire dining room to hear. That word, boss, echoed through the house like a gong. Sarah froze in the doorway, her wineglass trembling in her hand. Robert looked like someone had just slapped him with a ledger. Marcus, completely oblivious, was detonating years of their arrogance with every single sentence. He started praising my company, talking about the multi-million-dollar deals we'd closed together. He bragged about how Sterling Holdings was the best in the region and thanked me for making his biggest projects possible. Everyone just listened in stunned silence as the truth unraveled right in front of them. When Sarah finally found her voice, she whispered, "You own a company?" I looked at her and said, "Several." At that moment, her mother, Victoria, dropped her wineglass. Crimson wine flooded the pristine white floor like spilled blood. Then, as I grabbed my coat to leave, I delivered the final blow. I looked at Robert and said, "The rent is due on the 1st. Same amount, same schedule?" Their expressions twisted in confusion until Sarah's face went completely white. You're a landlord?" I just nodded. "Have been for 3 years? The bank would have foreclosed otherwise." That was the night everything shifted. About a week later, the Blackwells started lashing out. Anonymous complaints about my property started rolling in. Fake online reviews popped up everywhere. They even made calls to city inspectors, trying to cause trouble. It was a full-blown campaign designed to damage my business. What they didn't know was that I documented everything. I wasn't about to let them ruin what I had spent years building. I hired a private investigator, traced every single smear attempt back to them, and then I exposed their sabotage in a full-page ad in a major business journal. I didn't even need to mention their names. Everyone in the industry connected the dots. The fallout was immediate. Robert's project stalled, investors backed out, and Victoria's elite charity circles quietly shut her out. Sarah called me every day, angry at first, then desperate. I ignored every single message. Eventually, Robert invited me to a family dinner to fix things. I went mostly out of curiosity. The meal was incredibly awkward, the conversation forced. After dessert, he pulled out this sloppy business plan and begged me to partner with him on a new development project, as if months of sabotage could be erased with one dinner. I just looked him straight in the eyes and said, "You want me to invest with someone who just tried to destroy my company?" He sputtered excuses about family dynamics and pressure. Sarah started begging for us to start over. I told her it was impossible. "This didn't start today," I said. "It started the first time you made me use the back door." I left that night and I never looked back. The divorce was clean. There were no shared assets, no alimony. There was nothing for Sarah to claim because everything I owned predated our marriage. 6 months later, I issued a standard lease termination notice for the mansion. They packed up what they could and moved into a modest townhouse, a world away from the mansion they'd bragged about for decades. Robert took a job working for someone else. Victoria started shopping at regular stores. Sarah disappeared from my life except for one final message that said she hoped one day I'd forgive her. I never answered. Now, the house sits empty while I decide its future. Sometimes I drive past their new neighborhood. Not to gloat, but to remind myself that quiet strength is not weakness. I spent years letting people look down on me while I was building something they couldn't even dream of. And now, I have a new woman in my life. Someone who has never once asked me to use a back door. The best revenge wasn't humiliating them. It was building a life so solid, so fulfilling that their opinions meant absolutely nothing. Thanks for listening to my story. If it resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more. See you in the next one.